Welcome to Kindness Stories, where every tale reminds us that compassion, courage, and unexpected moments of kindness can change the world in ways we never imagined. If you're new here, we share real and inspired stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things and how one small act of bravery or a moment of kindness can ripple out to touch countless lives. So make sure to subscribe, grab your favorite drink, and settle in, because today's story is one you won't forget. In a small town nestled between green hills and endless wheat fields, there lived a girl named Eliza. She was 17, quiet, and the kind of person who would sit at the back of the classroom, with her books pressed tightly to her chest. She wore her hair in a low ponytail every day and kept her eyes down. When she walked through the halls, her uniform, a navy skirt and white blouse, was always crisp, always neat, as if it was her armor. She found safety in routine, in the way she would sit at the same table in the cafeteria, by the far window, watching the trees dance in the wind. But the world inside that school wasn't as gentle as the one she dreamed of. While staring out that window, the school had its shadows, and the biggest shadows belonged to a group of kids who prowled the halls looking for weakness, for someone to make smaller. They called themselves the Wolves. They were teenagers too, big, brash, the kind who walked through the halls like they owned the place. They fed off fear and laughter that wasn't really laughter, the kind that made your stomach hurt when you lay in bed at night. Eliza had never spoken back to them. She had learned long ago that silence was her shield, but sometimes silence only made the wolves hungrier. It all began on a rainy Thursday. The sky was a smear of gray, and thunder rumbled like an angry drum. Eliza sat alone at her usual spot in the cafeteria. She had a peanut butter sandwich, an apple, and a small carton of milk. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, trying to disappear into the hum of chatter and clinking trays. She thought about her mother waiting at home, about the cat curled up on her bed, about the book she wanted to finish that night. She didn't notice the shadows behind her until it was the late Derek, the leader of the wolves, slammed his palm down on her table. The noise made her flinch so hard that her milk carton toppled over, white liquid spreading across her tray. His friends, Mason and Leela, laughed, not because it was funny, but because they knew they could. Hey, shy girl, Derek sneered, leaning in so close she could smell the stale gum on his breath. Why do you always sit alone? Think you're better than us? She shook her head, unable to speak. Her throat felt like it was closing up. She reached for her milk carton, trying to mop it up with a napkin, her hands trembling. But Derek swatted her hand away. Oops, he said, voice dripping with mock sympathy. Clumsy, huh? Maybe you should learn to share. Leela leaned over and snatched Eliza's sandwich. She took a bite, chewed dramatically, and spit it out onto the tray. Gross. Do you even know how to make a sandwich? Mason picked up her apple and hurled it across the cafeteria. It hit the wall and exploded into pieces. The room fell silent for a heartbeat. Then a low buzz of whispers rose like static. But no one came to help. No one ever did. Eliza felt her eyes burn, but she wouldn't cry. She had promised herself that long ago they could do what they wanted, but they wouldn't get her tears. Derek wasn't done. He hooked his fingers under the collar of her blouse, tugging at it like it was just a piece of cloth, nothing more. You know, this uniform makes you look like a stuck-up prude, he said, his eyes flicking to his friends for approval. Maybe we should help you loosen up. And before Eliza could move, could run, could even scream, Derek yanked so hard that the buttons popped open. The sound of ripping fabric tore through the room louder than any thunder outside. Gasps echoed. Someone giggled nervously. Eliza clutched the torn edges of her blouse to her chest, her face burning with humiliation. She wanted to vanish. She wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Look at her, Leela said with a sneer. Lil Mouse doesn't even fight back. It was true. Eliza never fought back, but something was different that day. Maybe it was the rain pounding against the windows, or the way the apple had smashed like her dignity, or maybe it was the small voice inside her, the one she had buried years ago, whispering that enough was enough. She looked up at Derek, really looked at him. She saw not just his smirk, but the fear behind his eyes. The fear that if he didn't make others feel small, he'd feel small himself. Derek laughed, leaning closer, but before he could say another word, Eliza's knees shot up, powered by every ounce of anger, shame, and years of being small. The cafeteria fell silent again, so silent that they all heard the sickening crunch of bone meeting bone. Derek staggered back, clutching his side, gasping in pain. He let out a strangled cry that sounded nothing like the big bad wolf he pretended to be. Mason lunged forward, but Eliza stood, hands still gripping her torn blouse, eyes blazing. "Don't," she said. Just one word, but it was enough. Mason stopped in his tracks. Lila's mouth hung open. For the first time, they looked at her not like prey, but like something they couldn't quite tame. Astor's teachers came running. The principal, Mr. Harris, pushed through the gawking students, eyes wide at the sight of Derek curled on the floor, wheezing in pain. "What happened here?" he demanded. No one spoke at first. Then, slowly, one by one, the other students started talking. Stories spilled out like water from a cracked dam. They spoke of months, years, of torment. How the wolves cornered kids in hallways, tripped them in stairwells, mocked them in bathrooms. How everyone had been too scared to speak up and tell. Now Eliza stood in the middle of it all, trembling but upright, clutching her uniform closed. For once, she didn't feel small. She felt seen. The aftermath was a whirlwind. Derek was taken to the hospital, 3 cracked ribs. He would heal, but so would Eliza. Mason and Lila were suspended. The school started an investigation. Teachers held assemblies about bullying, hollow words, maybe, but something shifted that day. Word spread fast, as it always does in small towns. Parents whispered about the shy girl who fought back. Some said she should have just stayed quiet. That violence wasn't the answer. But others, the ones who knew the wolves had stalked their kids too, they quietly thanked her. For the first time, students began to speak up. Stories that had been secrets now found voices. Eliza's mother cried when she heard what had happened. She hugged her daughter tight that night, pressing kisses into her hair. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know," she whispered. Eliza didn't blame her. She didn't blame anyone. She just felt lighter, as if the rain had washed something clean inside her. The next day at school, she wore her spare uniform. It didn't fit quite right. The sleeves too short, the hem a little frayed. But she walked taller. She went to the cafeteria, sat at her usual table by the window. But this time, she wasn't alone. One by one, other kids came over. Some just sat nearby. Some offered her half their sandwich. Some just said, "Thank you." A boy named Noah, who had been shoved into lockers so many times he'd stopped flinching, sat across from her. He didn't say much, just shared his cookies and looked out the window with her. That was enough. Kindness is funny that way. Sometimes it starts with a smile, a word, a gentle hand. But sometimes kindness hides inside courage, inside a knee. Strike that says, "No more." It grows in places you'd never expect, like the cracks of a broken cafeteria, or the hushed stories of kids who found their voice. Months passed. The wolves never regained their power. Derek left the school. Rumor was his parents moved him to another district. Mason and Lila returned eventually, but they kept their distance. They looked smaller now, no longer fed by fear. Eliza didn't become loud overnight. She didn't suddenly stand at the front of the class or join the cheer squad, but she did start a kindness club, an idea that once would have made her laugh. She called it the Lighthouse, a place for anyone who felt alone to come and just be. They painted murals on the walls of an old storage room, bright splashes of color where darkness used to lurk. Kids, who had once sat alone, now found each other. They organized little acts of kindness, sticky notes with encouraging words on lockers, secret cupcakes left on desks, tiny things that made big differences. It was healing, for them, for her, for everyone who had ever felt like prey. Years later, when Eliza left for college, the lighthouse was still there. The room was brighter than ever. A new shy kid took over as its keeper. And the story of the girl who fought back, it lived on. Not as a story about violence, but about the moment when kindness found its courage and decided to roar. So if you've ever felt small, if you've ever felt like the world wants you to stay silent, remember Eliza's story. Remember that kindness doesn't always mean turning the other cheek. Sometimes kindness means standing up, even when your voice shakes. Sometimes it means saying, "No more," and meaning it with every bone in.